I was standing outside my own house at midnight, with one bag in my hand and nowhere to go. Behind that locked door, my sister was still laughing with her friends, eating the food she had ordered in my name. My mother's last words kept ringing in my ears. If you can't pay for this family, then you don't belong in it. So I wiped my tears, looked at that house one last time, and whispered, "One day you're going to beg me to come back." And 2 years later, they did. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me this: have you ever been treated like you didn't belong in your own family? Type yes or no in the comments. I'm reading every single one. My name is Jessica Miller. I'm 26 years old, and for as long as I can remember, I've been living a life that felt borrowed, like I was just filling space in someone else's story, never the one they actually cared about. By day, I worked a full-time job at a small logistics company in downtown Chicago. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills. Well, most of them. By night, I was a student, chasing a business degree I had been funding entirely on my own. Tuition, books, rent contributions, everything came out of my pocket. There were nights I slept 4 hours, sometimes less, running on caffeine and determination, telling myself it would all be worth it someday, because no one else was going to make it worth it for me. At home, I wasn't seen as the hardworking daughter. I wasn't the one anyone bragged about. I was just there. Quiet, reliable, convenient. The one who could always be counted on to step in when something needed to be paid, fixed, or handled, but never appreciated. I can't remember a single time my parents looked at me and said they were proud. Not once. It didn't matter how many hours I worked, how many sacrifices I made, or how many times I put my own needs aside to help the family. It was like I existed in the background, useful but invisible. And after a while, you stop expecting anything different. You stop hoping. I used to wonder what it would feel like to be the favorite, to be the one they protected, the one they celebrated, the one they chose. But that role was never mine. Because in our house, there was already someone who had that position locked down. And it definitely wasn't me. My parents weren't the kind of people who yelled all the time or created obvious chaos. No. What they did was quieter, colder. The kind of behavior that slowly eats away at you until one day you realize you've been shrinking your entire life just to fit into a space where you were never truly wanted. Everything in our house revolved around my younger sister, Emily. Emily didn't work. She didn't study. She didn't worry about bills, responsibilities, or consequences. Her life was a constant cycle of shopping, parties, and late mornings, and somehow that was perfectly fine. In fact, it was rewarded. If Emily wanted something, she got it. No questions asked. New clothes? Done. Expensive makeup? Of course. A spontaneous weekend trip with her friends? My parents would practically hand her the money with a smile. But when it came to me, everything was different. If I needed help with tuition, it was suddenly a financial burden. If I asked for anything, even something small, I was met with sighs, lectures, or silence. I learned very quickly that asking was pointless, so I stopped. What made it worse wasn't just the difference in treatment. It was how normal they made it seem, like I was the unreasonable one for expecting fairness. Like Emily deserved everything, and I should just be grateful for whatever scraps were left. I still remember one night, coming home exhausted after a double shift, my feet aching, my head pounding. Emily was sprawled out on the couch, scrolling through her phone, surrounded by shopping bags. My mom walked into the room, looked at her, and smiled. "Did you have fun today, sweetheart?" Then she glanced at me, and her expression changed completely. "There's food in the kitchen," she said flatly, before walking away. That was it. No, "How was your day?" No, "Are you okay?" Just instructions, like I was an afterthought. Emily didn't even look up at me. She didn't have to. She already knew how this worked. She had grown up being the center of everything, while I had grown up learning to survive on the edges. We were raised in the same house, by the same parents, but we lived completely different lives. And deep down, I think I always knew that one day that imbalance was going to break something. I just didn't know it would break everything. It started on a Friday afternoon, the kind of quiet moment that never stays quiet for long in our house. I had just walked in from work, my shoulders tense, my mind still stuck on deadlines and unfinished assignments. All I wanted was a few minutes of silence before I opened my laptop again. But the second I stepped into the living room, I knew that wasn't going to happen. Emily was in the center of the room, spinning in circles with her phone in her hand, laughing loudly as she spoke to someone on speaker. "Oh my God, yes, Saturday night. It's going to be insane. I'm inviting everyone." Everyone. That word hung in the air for a second, because everyone never included me. She didn't even glance in my direction as I walked past her, like I wasn't there, like I never was. Within an hour, the house had completely transformed. Music started playing, loud, pulsing bass that echoed through the walls. Emily moved through the rooms like she owned them, dragging decorations out of storage, rearranging furniture, turning our quiet home into something that felt more like a club than a place people actually lived in. String lights were hung across the ceiling, scented candles were lit, not because they looked nice, but because Emily liked the aesthetic. Empty space was cleared for dancing. Even the dining table was pushed aside to make room. And through all of it, I was invisible. At one point, I walked into the kitchen to grab a glass of water and found my mom standing next to Emily, scrolling through a list on her phone. "Should we get more snacks?" my mom asked, her tone soft, almost excited. Emily shrugged. "Yeah, I'm ordering a bunch of stuff tomorrow anyway. Pizza, wings, drinks, all that." My dad walked in right after, nodding approvingly. "Sounds like a real party." No one asked me anything. No one even acknowledged that I was standing right there. It wasn't new, but somehow it still stung. Saturday came faster than I expected. By evening, the house was buzzing with energy. People started arriving in groups, loud voices, laughter, the constant sound of doors opening and closing. Emily greeted every single one of them with a hug, her smile wide, her energy magnetic. "Come in, make yourselves at home." I stayed upstairs at first, trying to focus on my assignments, but the noise made it impossible. Every burst of laughter, every beat of music felt like a reminder that I didn't belong in my own home. Eventually, I came downstairs, not to join them, but just to grab something quick from the kitchen. As I walked past the living room, I caught snippets of conversation. "This place is amazing." "Emily, you really outdid yourself." "Best party this weekend for sure." She soaked it all in, every compliment, every bit of attention. And then I noticed something else. The kitchen counter was covered with empty plates, half-finished drinks, and a growing mess that no one seemed to care about. Someone had spilled soda near the sink. Another person had left food wrappers scattered across the table. And Emily? She just laughed and walked away. I stood there for a moment, staring at it all, already knowing how this would end. Because somehow, when the night was over, the responsibility would find its way back to me. It always did. And deep down, I could feel it. That quiet, familiar tension building again. Like something was about to happen. Something that was going to push everything too far. By the time the night hit its peak, the house didn't even feel like mine anymore. Music was blasting. People were everywhere, laughing, shouting, dancing like they owned the place. I stayed near the kitchen, keeping to myself, trying not to get pulled into something I never agreed to be part of. Then the doorbell rang. It was loud, sharp, almost cutting through the chaos. Emily spun around instantly, her eyes lighting up. "That's the food!" She rushed to the door, practically pushing people aside as she opened it. A delivery guy stood there, arms full of pizza boxes, bags of wings, drinks, more than enough to feed everyone in the house twice over. "Wow," someone behind her laughed. "You went all out." Emily grinned. "Of course I did." She took everything from the delivery guy like it was nothing, like this was all just part of the plan. No hesitation, no concern. I watched from the kitchen as she stacked the boxes on the counter, her friends gathering around her, already reaching for slices before everything was even set down. "Careful, it's hot," she laughed. Then the delivery guy stepped inside slightly, holding out the receipt. It's going to be $187 or $50. Emily didn't even look at it. Instead, she turned her head slowly and looked straight at me. For a second, I thought I misunderstood, but then she smiled, casual, careless, and said, "You'll pay for it, right?" I blinked. "What?" Her friends went quiet just for a moment, like they were waiting for the punchline. Emily rolled her eyes slightly, like I was the one making things awkward. "Jessica, come on. You know how this works," she said, waving her hand dismissively. "Just cover it." I felt something tighten in my chest. How this works. The delivery guy was still standing there, waiting. The room had gone just quiet enough for everyone to hear what was happening. "I didn't order this," I said slowly. Emily shrugged. "Yeah, but you always help out. Don't make it a big deal." Don't make it a big deal. Like this was nothing. Like I was nothing. The silence stretched, and for the first time, something inside me didn't feel like bending. It felt like breaking. I looked at her, really looked at her, at the way she stood there, so sure of herself, so certain that I would just fall in line like I always did, like I didn't have a choice, like I never had a choice. And something inside me finally snapped. No. The word came out calm, quiet, but it hit the room harder than any shout ever could. Emily froze for a second, like she wasn't sure she heard me right. "What?" I said no. I repeated, my voice steadier this time. "I'm not paying for this." Her expression changed instantly. The smile dropped. The irritation came fast. "Jessica, stop. This isn't funny." "I'm not joking." The delivery guy shifted awkwardly near the door. A few of her friends exchanged looks, sensing the tension rising. Emily stepped closer to me, lowering her voice, but not enough for it to be private. "You've paid for things before. Why are you acting like this now?" I let out a slow breath, feeling years of frustration pressing against my chest. "Because I'm tired," I said. "I'm tired of being the one who always pays, the one who always fixes things, the one who gets nothing back." She scoffed. "Oh my God, here we go." "No," I cut in, louder now. "You don't get to roll your eyes this time." The room went completely still. "I work every day. I pay for my own education. I've helped this family more times than I can count, and none of you have ever cared," I said, my voice shaking slightly now, but I didn't stop. "And tonight? You throw a party, invite all your friends, order almost $200 worth of food, and just expect me to cover it like I'm your personal bank account?" Emily's face hardened. "It's not that serious." "It is to me." That was the truth, for the first time in my life. I wasn't backing down, and deep down, I knew. This moment was going to change everything. The silence didn't last long. "What's going on here?" My dad's voice cut through the room as he stepped in from the hallway, his expression already irritated. My mom followed right behind him, her eyes scanning the scene, the delivery guy still standing awkwardly, Emily's tense posture, and me, standing there like I had just done something unforgivable. Emily didn't waste a second. "She's refusing to pay," she said, her tone sharp, almost offended. "After everything." My dad turned to me slowly. "What?" "I didn't order this," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm not paying for it." That was all it took. His face hardened instantly. "Are you serious right now?" My mom stepped forward, her voice already rising. "Jessica, what is wrong with you? Your sister is hosting guests." "So?" I shot back before I could stop myself. "That doesn't mean I have to pay for her party." The room shifted. You could feel it. That invisible line I had just crossed. My dad let out a short, bitter laugh. "Unbelievable. After everything we've done for you, this is how you act?" Something twisted inside me. "Everything you've done for me?" Emily crossed her arms, shaking her head dramatically. This is so embarrassing. No, I said, louder now, my voice breaking through the noise. What's embarrassing is expecting me to fund your lifestyle while you do nothing. Watch your tone, my mom snapped. Why? I said, my heart pounding now. Because I'm finally telling the truth? The tension snapped. You are being selfish, my dad said coldly. This family has always supported you. I almost laughed, but it came out hollow. Supported me? When? When I paid my own tuition? When I worked 2 jobs just to stay afloat? When I covered bills you didn't want to deal with? Enough, my mom shouted. You're not going to stand here and disrespect us in front of everyone. I looked around. Emily's friends were watching, silent, uncomfortable, but still watching. Like this was some kind of show. And suddenly, I felt it. That deep, crushing realization. They weren't embarrassed by what was happening. They were embarrassed by me. You've always been like this, my dad continued, his voice low and sharp. Difficult. Ungrateful. Emily smirked slightly, like she had already won. And in that moment, I understood. No matter what I said, no matter what I did, they were never going to choose me. Then maybe you shouldn't be here. The words came from my dad, calm, but final. For a second, I thought I misheard him. What? If you can't support this family, he said, his tone cold and unwavering, then you don't belong in this house. My chest tightened. You're serious? My mom crossed her arms. You've made your position clear, Jessica. Now we're making ours. Emily didn't say anything. She didn't have to. She just stood there, watching. And that hurt more than anything. You're kicking me out? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. My dad didn't hesitate. Yes. The word hit harder than I expected. For a moment, everything around me felt distant. The music, the voices, the people. Like I was standing outside my own life, watching it happen to someone else. But it wasn't someone else. It was me. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to stay standing, even as everything inside me felt like it was collapsing. Fine, I said quietly. I turned and walked upstairs, ignoring the stares, the whispers, the uncomfortable silence that followed me. My hands shook as I grabbed the only things I could carry, a small bag, a few clothes, my laptop. That was all I had. That was all I ever had. When I came back down, no one stopped me. No one said a word. I walked past them, past the house I had grown up in, past the people who were supposed to be my family. And right before I stepped out the door, I paused. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. You'll regret this, I said, my voice calm, but certain. Then I walked out into the night, and this time, I didn't look back. The first night after I left, I didn't sleep. Not really. I was on a worn-out couch in my friend Lauren's apartment, staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint hum of traffic outside. Her place was small, 1 bedroom, barely enough space for 2 people, but she didn't hesitate when I called. She just said, "Come over," like it was nothing. I kept replaying everything in my head, the voices, the looks, the door closing behind me. It didn't feel real. 26 years of my life, reduced to 1 bag sitting on the floor next to me. I didn't cry, not the way I thought I would. It was more like a heavy emptiness pressing down on my chest, a quiet realization settling in. I was on my own, completely. The next few days were a blur of exhaustion and uncertainty. I went to work like nothing had happened, forcing a normal expression on my face while my mind raced in 100 different directions. Where was I going to live? How long could I stay here? What if something went wrong? Every question felt bigger than me. Lauren tried to help, offering me her bed while she took the couch, but I refused. I couldn't take more than I already had. I was already starting from nothing. I didn't want to feel like a burden too, because that's what I had always been made to feel like, a burden. But something inside me had changed. Every time doubt crept in, Every time I thought about going back, apologizing, fixing things the way I always did, I remembered that moment, the way they looked at me, the way they chose her, and suddenly, going back didn't feel like an option anymore. It felt like defeat. So instead, I made a quiet promise to myself that night, lying there in the dark. No matter how hard this got, I was going to build something of my own, something no one could take from me again. The first few weeks were the hardest. I kept my routine the same: wake up early, go to work, come back exhausted, but everything else had to change. I couldn't afford to drift anymore. I didn't have the safety net I thought I had. So I started looking for a way out, not just survival, but something better. It began with late nights. After work, while everyone else was relaxing, I sat at Lauren's small kitchen table with my laptop open, searching, learning, trying to figure out how people built lives online. I didn't have a clear plan. I just knew I couldn't stay stuck where I was. I watched videos, read articles, took notes like my life depended on it. Because it did. At first, it was overwhelming. There were too many options: freelancing, online stores, digital services. I didn't know where to start, but I forced myself to pick one path and stick to it. I decided to build something simple, an online store. It sounded crazy at the time. I didn't have experience, I didn't have money to waste, but I had one thing I had never really used before: control. The first version of my store was bad. The design looked cheap. The product selection was random. I barely understood how marketing worked. I remember refreshing the page over and over again, hoping to see a sale. Nothing happened. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Still nothing. There were nights I wanted to quit so badly it physically hurt. Nights where I stared at the screen and thought, this isn't going to work. But every time I felt like giving up, I remembered where I came from, and I kept going. I started improving things little by little. I learned how to design better pages, how to write descriptions that actually made people interested, how to run small ads without wasting money. I studied what successful stores were doing, and slowly I started understanding the patterns. It wasn't fast, it wasn't easy, but it was progress. Then one night, everything changed. I was sitting at the table, half asleep, my eyes burning from staring at the screen too long, when I heard a soft notification. I almost ignored it, but something made me check. And there it was. My first sale. It wasn't a huge amount, just a small order. But to me, it felt like everything, because it proved something. This could work. I sat there for a long time, just staring at the screen, a small smile forming on my face for the first time in weeks. That one sale turned into 2, then 5, then 10. Slowly, the numbers started growing. Not overnight, not magically, but steadily. And with every sale, every small win, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Power. Not over other people, but over my own life. For the first time, I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was building something real. It didn't happen overnight. There was no dramatic moment where everything suddenly changed. But one morning, I woke up, checked my account, and realized something felt different. The numbers weren't small anymore. They weren't just enough to get by. For the first time, they meant something. I sat there on the edge of Lauren's couch, staring at my phone, refreshing the screen like I was afraid it might disappear. But it didn't. My online store had crossed a point I never thought I'd reach this quickly. Orders were coming in consistently. Not just one here and there, but every single day. Real money, my money, earned by something I built, from nothing. I felt my chest tighten, but not in that heavy, suffocating way I used to feel. This was different. This was relief. I leaned back slowly, letting it sink in. All those nights. All that doubt, all the times I questioned myself. It had led to this moment, and then a thought hit me so clearly, it almost scared me. I don't need them anymore. Not their approval, not their support, not their house, nothing. For so long, I had lived my life trying to earn a place in a family that never truly wanted me. I kept proving myself, hoping one day they'd see me differently. But sitting there, looking at the life I was building on my own, I realized something painful and freeing at the same time. They were never going to change, and I didn't need them to. I wasn't that girl anymore, the one who stayed quiet, who accepted whatever scraps she was given, who kept giving without ever getting anything back. That version of me was gone. I had built something for myself, and for the first time in my life, I felt in control. While my life was slowly coming together, theirs was starting to fall apart. I didn't see it happen. I heard about it. And when I did, it didn't surprise me, because Emily had never changed. If anything, she had gotten worse. Without me around, there was no one left to quietly clean up after her, no one to absorb the consequences of her decisions. She kept living the same way she always had. Parties, late nights, careless choices. Except this time, there was no safety net. It happened on a Saturday night. Another party. Another group of friends. Another round of drinks that never seemed to end. From what I was told, Emily had been drinking for hours. Not just casually, recklessly. The kind of drinking where people stop thinking clearly, but still believe they're in control. And then, she made the worst decision she could have made. She got behind the wheel. No one stopped her. Or maybe they tried, and she ignored them. That sounded more like her. She drove off like nothing could touch her, like there would be no consequences. But there were. About 15 minutes later, everything changed. She ran a red light. Another car came through the intersection at full speed. There was no time to react. The crash was violent, loud enough that people nearby heard it from inside their homes. Glass shattered, metal twisted. The kind of impact that doesn't just damage a car, it changes lives. Police arrived within minutes. So did the ambulance. Emily survived. But the other driver didn't walk away without damage. They were injured, seriously enough to require immediate medical attention. It wasn't just a minor accident, it was a legal disaster. At the scene, everything became clear. The smell of alcohol, the failed sobriety test, the cold, undeniable truth that Emily had been driving under the influence. She was arrested on the spot, and just like that, the situation spiraled out of control. Charges were filed. A DUI alone would have been bad enough. But this was worse, because now there was an injured victim involved. And in the United States, that meant lawsuits. Big ones, medical bills, damages, legal fees, compensation claims, the kind of numbers that don't just hurt, they destroy. My parents tried to manage it at first. They hired a lawyer, thinking they could contain the situation, fix it the way they always tried to fix everything. But this wasn't something you could smooth over. This wasn't a small mistake. It was public. It was serious. And it was expensive. Very expensive. The case dragged on, pulling them deeper and deeper into financial strain. Insurance didn't cover everything. Legal fees kept piling up. Every decision Emily had made that night came back, again and again, and for the first time, they couldn't escape it. The life they had built, the comfort, the control, the illusion that everything would always work out in their favor, it started cracking. And this time, there was no one left to carry the weight for them. At first, my parents treated it like every other problem they had ever faced. Contain it, control it, move on. That had always been their pattern. But this time, it didn't work. The legal fees started quietly, just a few thousand here and there for consultations, paperwork, court filings. Nothing they hadn't handled before. My dad convinced himself it was temporary. "It's just the beginning," he kept saying. "Once we get through the first hearing, things will settle." They didn't. Every week brought something new. Another bill. Another requirement. Another complication. Because this wasn't just about Emily getting a DUI, this was about the damage she caused. The other driver's medical bills alone were overwhelming. hospital stays, treatments, follow-up care. And since Emily was at fault, those costs weren't going away. They were growing, fast. My parents turned to insurance, hoping it would cover most of it. That's what insurance was for, right? But reality hit them harder than they expected. Coverage limits, exclusions, delays. The policy didn't come close to handling the full amount, and once the numbers crossed that limit, everything else became their responsibility. That's when the panic started. Not all at once, slowly, quietly. But it was there. My mom began cutting back on things she never would have touched before. No more casual spending, no more extras. She stopped going out as often, stopped buying things she didn't absolutely need. Emily, for once, wasn't laughing. Court dates kept coming. The case dragged on. The injured driver filed a civil lawsuit on top of the criminal charges. Now, it wasn't just about penalties. It was about compensation. Big compensation. The kind that could wipe out everything. My dad tried to stay calm, but cracks started to show. Late nights at the kitchen table, papers spread out everywhere, phone calls that ended in silence. He was running numbers, trying to find a way out. There wasn't one. Debt started stacking up faster than they could manage it. Credit cards, loans, anything they could access to keep up with the growing costs. And still, it wasn't enough. Because the truth was simple. They were drowning. The house, once their biggest symbol of stability, became their last option. I heard about it weeks later. They had listed it quietly at first, hoping they wouldn't actually have to go through with it. But as the bills kept piling up, hope turned into necessity. They didn't have a choice. They sold it. The place they had chosen over me. The place they had thrown me out of without hesitation. Gone. And even that wasn't enough to fix everything, because by then, the damage was too deep. The money disappeared almost as quickly as it came in. Legal settlements, outstanding debts, fees that seemed endless. And for the first time in their lives, they were running out of options. Completely. The control they once had, the confidence they carried, it was gone, replaced by something they had never really faced before. Fear. What started as a private crisis didn't stay private for long. The case made its way into local news. At first, it was just a short report, another DUI incident, another reckless decision. But as details came out, it grew. The injuries, the lawsuit, the financial damage, it all became part of a story people talked about. And with every new update, my family's name was dragged deeper into it. Neighbors started whispering. Old friends stopped calling. People who once smiled at my parents now avoided eye contact completely. The same social circles they used to move through so confidently shut them out without hesitation. Reputation, something they had always cared about, was gone. Emily's case got worse with time. Court hearings didn't go in her favor. The evidence was clear. The responsibility was undeniable. Every attempt to reduce the damage failed. And the civil lawsuit? It hit harder than anything else. The compensation demanded was massive. Medical costs, long-term care, emotional damages, it all added up to a number my parents couldn't even comprehend at first. There was no negotiating their way out of it, no shortcuts, no control, just consequences. The stress started breaking them down. My mom, who used to hold everything together with quiet confidence, became restless, anxious. Sleepless nights turned into constant worry. Every phone call made her flinch. Every letter in the mail felt like another blow. My dad changed too. The man who once spoke with certainty now sounded uncertain, tired, defeated. He spent hours sitting in silence, staring at nothing, like he was trying to calculate a way out that didn't exist. But there wasn't one. The house was gone. The savings were gone. The stability they had built their entire lives around, gone. And the worst part? It still wasn't enough. Because the case hadn't ended. The legal pressure didn't stop. And for the first time in their lives, they had to face a reality they never prepared for. There was no one left to fix it. No one left to carry the burden for them. No way out. While everything behind me was falling apart, Everything ahead of me was finally coming together. My online business didn't just grow, it took off. What started as a small idea, something I built late at night on a borrowed table, turned into something real, something stable, something powerful. Orders became consistent, then predictable, then scalable. I moved out of Lauren's apartment into my own place, not big, not flashy, but mine. Every piece of furniture, every detail, chosen by me, paid for by me, earned. My days changed. I still worked hard, but now it felt different. I wasn't chasing survival anymore. I was building growth, expanding, learning how to take what I had created and push it further. I hired help. Just a small step at first, someone to manage customer support, then someone else to help with operations. Slowly, my one-person effort turned into something bigger than I ever imagined. And with it, I changed too. I wasn't the girl who stayed quiet anymore. I wasn't the one who accepted whatever people gave me. I spoke differently, carried myself differently, made decisions without second-guessing every move. There was a confidence in me now, one that didn't come from anyone else's approval. It came from experience, from surviving, from building something out of nothing. Sometimes, late at night, I would sit in my apartment, looking out at the city lights, and think about everything that had happened. The house, the arguments, the moment I walked out with nothing. And I realized something that I hadn't fully understood before. That moment didn't break me, it freed me. Because if I had stayed, I would still be the same person, still giving, still invisible, still waiting for someone to finally see my worth. But now, I didn't need anyone to see it. I already knew it, and that made all the difference. Because the life I had built was finally mine. They didn't find out about me right away. At first, they were too consumed by their own problems, the court dates, the bills, the pressure closing in from every direction. My name wasn't part of their world anymore, until it was. It happened through someone they knew, a mutual connection. Someone who had seen my business online. Someone who recognized my name and mentioned it casually, not knowing what it would trigger. "Isn't that your daughter?" That's how it started. Curiosity turned into searching. Searching turned into discovery. And suddenly, everything changed. They saw it. The website, the reviews, the growth, the numbers, the life I had built. Without them. From what I was told, my mom didn't believe it at first. She thought it had to be a mistake, someone else with the same name, but it wasn't. It was me. The daughter they had pushed aside, the one they said didn't belong, now, living a life they couldn't even imagine. Shock hit them first, then silence. And after that, something else crept in. Desperation, because for the first time they saw something they didn't have anymore, stability, control, a way out, and suddenly, they knew exactly where to go. I didn't expect to see them again, not like that. It was a quiet afternoon when the knock came. I wasn't waiting for anyone, so for a second I just stood there, staring at the door, feeling something strange settle in my chest. A feeling I couldn't explain, but somehow recognized. When I opened it, they were standing there. My parents. They looked different, older, tired, worn down in a way I had never seen before. The confidence they used to carry so easily was gone, replaced by something fragile, uncertain. For a moment, no one spoke. Then my mom took a small step forward, her voice softer than I had ever heard it. "Jessica." Just hearing my name from her like that felt unfamiliar. "We need to talk," my dad added, his tone careful, like he was choosing every word. I didn't invite them in right away. I just stood there studying them. The same people who had thrown me out without hesitation, now standing at my door like strangers. "Talk," I said finally. They exchanged a quick look before stepping inside. The silence that followed was heavy. Then my mom broke it. "We know about your business," she said, her eyes scanning the room, taking everything in. "You've done really well." I didn't respond. She swallowed, her hands clasping together nervously. We're going through a difficult time right now. Things didn't turn out the way we expected. My dad stepped in, his voice more direct. We need help. There it was. No apology, no acknowledgement, just need. I felt something cold settle inside me. We've lost a lot, he continued. The house, our savings, everything. The case, it's worse than we thought. My mom's voice trembled slightly now. We don't have anyone else to turn to. I looked at them, really looked, and for the first time, I saw exactly what they had become. Not strong, not in control, just desperate. And then she said it. Jessica, please, we're your parents. The words hung in the air, heavy with expectation, with guilt, with everything they thought would still work on me. But it didn't. Not anymore. I didn't answer right away. For a moment, I just stood there, looking at them, really looking at them. The same people who had once made me feel small, invisible, replaceable, now standing in my home, waiting for something from me, waiting for me to save them. I took a slow breath and walked past them, gesturing lightly toward the couch. Sit. They did, quietly, carefully, like they didn't want to say the wrong thing and lose whatever chance they thought they still had. I remained standing. I heard what you said, I began, my voice calm, steady. You need help. My dad nodded quickly. Yes, just until we get back on our feet. We'll pay you back. I raised my hand slightly. He stopped. I don't doubt that you believe that, I said. But that's not the point. My mom leaned forward, her voice soft, almost pleading. Jessica, we're your family. I let out a small, controlled breath. Family, I repeated quietly. The word felt different now. Lighter, like it had lost its weight. Where was that word, the night you told me I didn't belong in your house? I asked, meeting their eyes one by one. Where was family when you stood there and watched me leave with nothing? They didn't answer. Of course they didn't, because there was no answer. I didn't ask you for anything, I continued. Not when I was paying for my own education. Not when I was working myself to exhaustion just to survive. Not even when you treated me like I didn't matter. My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Every time I needed support, you gave it to someone else. Emily. They both looked away for a second, like the name didn't even need to be said. And now, I said slowly, you're here, asking me to give you what you never gave me. Silence filled the room, heavy, unavoidable. My dad cleared his throat. We made mistakes, but we're trying to fix things now. I shook my head slightly. No, I said. You're trying to fix the consequences. That hit. I could see it in their faces. I already fixed my life, I continued, on my own, without you, without your help, without your approval. I paused for a second, letting the words settle. And I'm not going to put myself back in a position where I'm expected to carry you again. My mom's eyes filled with tears. Jessica, please. But I didn't move. I wish things had been different, I said quietly. I really do. And for a moment, that was the truth. But they weren't. I walked toward the door and opened it. Not aggressively, not angrily, just finally. You made your choice, I said, my voice calm but firm. Now I'm making mine. They didn't argue. They didn't fight, because deep down, they already knew. There was nothing left to say. As they walked out, slowly, silently, I closed the door behind them. And this time, it wasn't pain I felt, it was peace. That night after they left, I didn't feel heavy. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel like I had just lost something. I felt free. I walked back into my living room, the same space they had just sat in, and for a moment I just stood there, taking it all in. The quiet, the calm, the life I had built with my own hands. No pressure, no expectations, no one waiting to take from me. I moved to the window and looked out at the city lights, glowing in the distance. A few years ago, I would have stood here wondering if I was enough, if I was doing enough, if I would ever be seen. Now? I already knew the answer. I wasn't just enough. I was more than they ever allowed me to believe. I had turned rejection into direction, pain into power, and loss into something that finally gave me control over my own life. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need their acceptance, because everything I needed, I had already built. And this time, no one could take it away from me. So tell me, if you were in my place, what would you have done? Would you have helped them after everything, or would you have walked away, just like I did? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one, and if this story hit you even a little, make sure to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more real stories like this. Because sometimes, the people who break you are the ones who unknowingly build you into something unstoppable.